Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I am delighted to get through the Wednesday Acsom Bulletin with a full squad. We have Kevin Graham, the old head, who has appeared on a Celtic State of Mind since 2017. Kev, you're almost due a testimonial, mate. We may do a joint one, like Bobby Lennox and Jimmy Johnston.
I'm going to be your James Forrest. I'm staying here for the testimonial. You're not getting rid of me at all.
We're going to come back about, James
I'm
Forrest.
going to St Johnson on loan.
No chance.
I'm going to St Johnson to wind down my career. No chance. I'm staying here.
There'll be no Mikey Johnson loan deals for you, my friend.
No danger.
We've also got Acsom Rabbani, who's out and about, beautiful surroundings in Glasgow. And we've got a debut from Josh Murphy. Josh, welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. How are you enjoying being involved? At that moment, he freezes. A lot of people freeze on a debut. That sometimes happens, but what we'll do is we'll say to Josh, the best thing to do in a situation like that, switch it all off, switch it all back on, and come back in. That is the kind of limit of my technical nous. Acsom.
That was a Dirk Brichter debut. Do you remember that?
It was. It absolutely was. But if Josh gets that reset, we'll bring him back in and get to know him a wee bit better. A debut on Acsom is always good. We're talking, obviously, in the week leading up to what could be a historic double. Let's not forget, Acsom, Brendan Rodgers' record in this tournament. It's flawless.
Yep, it's unbelievable. If you look at his cup record, obviously just that one blip at Rugby Park earlier in the season. But other than that, flawless, as you said, in the Scottish Cup. And I'm sure he'll be hammering home that message. Obviously, Saturday was brilliant, from start to finish. The atmosphere at the ground. The game itself was, an enjoyable watch in the main. Obviously, second half, we kind of, everyone was just waiting for that, the celebrations at the end. But it was just fitting to get the goal. The Joe Hart moment, everything was just perfect about Saturday. But I'm sure we've celebrated, the players have celebrated, but this week it's all about getting back to business, and that's been the message coming out from the camp and from Rodgers as well. And I'm sure that's firmly what we'll be all about on Saturday. I think we're in good shape, but it's going to by no means be easy, as we've seen the games have been close against them this season in terms of scoreline, maybe not always in terms of the actual momentum in the games. I think the scorelines have maybe flattered them a little bit, that they've only been by a single goal. But yeah, we'll be not taking that lightly, and I'm looking forward to it. I think we can go into that game rightfully full of confidence.
Yeah, I think so. And there's confidence, and they're coming in with a bit of arrogance at times, Kevin. And I think we have seen that. We've seen it from the other side, the Glasgow. Josh, you're back. Great to see you, pal. And we're going to be talking about all of that because we get used, Kev, to the lead up to these big games. You're back. We get used to the lead up to these big games, Kevin. And, there was a few words used by Brendan Rodgers the other week, which I found very interesting. He was talking about being calm and remaining focused on the job. So, all that stuff about mouthing off as well, he mentioned that. And we know who he's talking about, Kev. And I think the minute you start doing that in the Celtic side, we've seen it in recent times from Haksabanovic, for example, using his socials to try and get a point across. We've seen it previously from Giakoumakis and Julian. Rodgers isn't interested in all that nonsense, is he? He's not interested in that bluster.
No, he's not interested in that bluster. And it's one of the things you can rule with an iron fist. We've seen managers that have tried to rule with an iron fist. Your Van Gaal springs to mind, who had a very young Ajax team, and as soon as they got any sort of success, they didn't like his strict disciplinarian rules. And I think Rodgers is maybe not a strict disciplinarian, but he knows the standards that he sets, and he doesn't go in there with a rule book and he nails it up in the dressing room wall and goes like, you can't take your phone and you can't be on Snapchat, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I think he expects a standard from his players, and as you say, if they slip below that, they just quietly get removed. They just quietly go away. And you look at Bernabe, whose watch never worked any time that he was in Glasgow, and he had so many chances, and there's like, you see that, but you also see managers that come in with a bluster going like that. I am a disciplinarian, I do that. I think Rodgers gets it through respect, and yes, players will not like him, Yes, players will make fun out of him, but that's because he's probably not playing them and stuff like that. I'm not worried about this week. And this is one of the strangest things for a wee while. Yes, I understand it's a 50-50 game. It is a 50-50 game. We could get beat. You look at the Aberdeen game at Hampden, absolutely horrendous. Could have went either way. On the day, we were by far the better side, but we were absolutely rubbish. But I'm not worried this week at all because I think we'll prepare right. And if we didn't perform on Saturday and we lose, then I don't think it's anything to do with the preparation. I think it'll just be the vagrancies of football. But I'm very, very calm going into this week and going into the cup final. And it's no complacency. It isn't complacency. It's just gone, I'm calm. What's going to happen will happen. We are the better footballing side, but that's not to say that football happens. But I know for a fact, even at the end of 90 minutes, 120 minutes on Saturday, hopefully not 120 minutes, hopefully it's over by half time. I will still walk at that stadium on Saturday night knowing full well that we are the better side. No matter what happens, that narrative is not going to change no matter who's folk who like to set their own narrative. That narrative's not going to change with me. I'll know that we are the better side.
Yeah, this is a big thing, Kev, because we know that in a one-off game, there are so many things that can happen that, they conspire to work against you. And in Scottish football, we often talk about officialdom in that respect. These things can work against you on the day. But I think you're right. Over the season, we have shown that we are a better side. And Brendan Rodgers has this tremendous record. Before I come back to Josh, I'm going to run through some of the comments here just to get you into the mood, Josh, just so that you can see how it works here on a Celtic State of Mind. Kevin Mullen, welcome to the show. You are watching on the YouTube channel. Afternoon Acsom, can't see anything other than a Celtic win this Saturday. Plain and simple, we have better players and in better place 3-0 the Hoops. Listen, that wouldn't surprise me, Kevin, but what Kevin Graham's saying isn't negative. If anything happens and we come away from that 90 minutes having not won the game, I'm still walking away from that match knowing or believing that Celtic are the better side. Joe Hamilton, the answer is yes, and a big thanks to all the Acsom team for keeping us going through these boring days without our team. Well, what we'll all be doing, Joe, is continuing that. In the past, pre-seasons have been pretty short in relation to qualifiers and that kind of thing. Managerial changes always throws up loads of talking points. But this summer, we will be doing our usual on the weekdays. We'll be covering any Euro games that involve Celtic players, and we'll be keeping that ticking along until the new season comes into action. Let them do all the mouthing off, as usual, says Jungle Lion. Yeah, I think so. Where is Acsom? Always in such glamorous locations, says Kaiser. Yes. What's that annoying noise? No, it's not me, Joe. It's just that Acsom is recording in the public domain, and when he's not giving us his views, he'll mute that, so there'll be no background noise. I want to start off. I'm going to come to Josh here. It's been the long-awaited debut. He's been on the sidelines waiting to get on there, and obviously there's been a bit of a delay, but here he is. And I'm going to come up with Ben Doak. Wow, what a rise. Pete McGee. I think this opens up two discussion points. The first one is the Euros provisional squad. Stevie Clarke's Scotland provisional squad has been announced. And we've got 4 Celts in the squad. Josh, what do you make of that? Great news for James Forrest, but also for Tony Ralston, when you consider he's not played many games this season.
Yeah, I think it's great news, to be honest. Ralston especially, because I think he's got a spot in the team. There's quite a high chance with Hickey being out. I think he'll get a lot of minutes in comparison to last time when he was in the squad. I don't think he got much. I think he got 16 minutes last time. So I think he'll be playing a lot more. I think James Forrest has earned his spot. He's played really well at the end of the season. I'm interested to see what kind of position Clarke finds for him in the team. And Callum McGregor, as we know, I think at the Euros, it was last time he was Scotland's best player. I think he's really important to the squad. Anytime he's not in it in Scotland, you can tell the difference when he's not there to help dictate the tempo. So I'm really excited to see the impact the Celtic players can have on the Scotland squad.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you dive in.
I'll tell you where he sees James Forrest being right wing back against Hungary and Switzerland, because we haven't got a right hand sided player. he'll play either Ralston or Porteous at right back against Germany because they won't have much of the ball. But I reckon he actually sees Forrest as a right wing back in the 2 other games because he'll go to that back three.
I was looking at that squad today, and by my calculations, and I'm not including Andy Robertson in this, I think there are 10 current or ex-Celts in the squad, so plenty to keep the juices flowing when we're watching the Scotland game. And there's also a Dykes up front, so I'm happy with that. I'll be watching him with interest as well. And then, of course, you've got John McGinn, but we're not going to be talking about that today. Acsom, Jamesy Forrest, a real success story, you know, in his testimonial year. Kev has called himself the James Forrest of Acsom. Acsom, what do you make of the announcement? Because it would be tremendous to see all 4 Celts appearing, but it would cap a great testimonial season for Jamesy Forrest, wouldn't it?
It's mad how it's transpired, because you look at halfway through the season, you just did not foresee this, and it's a testament to Forrest himself. And I'll be the first to hold my hands up that I was doubting him earlier in the season. I was wondering whether he's going to be able to contribute effectively, even just for us. And lo and behold, he's been such a key figure in these since the split. Basically, he's been brilliant for Celtic and well deserved his call up. And you genuinely can see him playing an important role for Scotland as well. I think his game intelligence is something that's maybe been underrated, and I think that's something that you've really seen come to the fore. You know, he may not have that explosive pace that he once did, but even that I've been quite impressed with. I think he's been taking players on. He seems like he's got a spring in his step, some real added confidence. But just his decision making on the ball, when to pass, when to move, when to take shots on, everything's been pretty much spot on from James in the last few weeks. And that's something that Steve Clarke will have noticed and really probably valued, and think, you know, given the kind of team that Scotland are, we're going to have to play different ways against the different teams. Against Germany, as Kev says, we'll have less of the ball, and a guy like Forrest who you know, he can put in a shift as well, and his use of the ball is pretty effective. And then in the games against Hungary, where we maybe be on the front foot a bit more, again, he can use his pace and his direct running style. So I think there's definitely a place for him. Obviously, Scotland have got a few injuries down that right-hand side, so it will be interesting to see how he's used. But absolutely, it's incredible how James, from you look at it from earlier in the season, he had his testimonial. I was at that game, and you then wondered, is he actually going to feature much? And he had a few appearances, but for him to turn it around the way he has is brilliant. And you know, I think he's still got a future to play, even maybe next season, which is not something I thought I'd be saying a few months ago. So brilliant news for him, brilliant news for all the Celtic players. To see all 4 of them in the provisional squad is great, and I think all 4 deserve it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Everybody that watches Acsom will know that Tony Ralston is indeed my favourite player, and the reason that he's my favourite player isn't down to his technical ability, Kev. I just love, you know, the homegrown players coming through. I love the fact that although he's been up against it, you know, he's had that mental fortitude to stick around and prove, you know, various gaffers now wrong about him who didn't play him all that often. He's now very much a squad player, but as Josh says, you know, the situation with the right backs means that he's in the squad, and I hope he does get game time. I remember when he came on in the last Euros, I was just thinking, what a turnaround in a career that is. But the reason I'm focusing on Tony, Kev, is I want to touch on the fact that Ben Doak is named in that squad. And every time I see the progress of him, I think superb. You know, he's come from the Celtic Academy, from the stable, and look what he's doing. You know, he's played for Liverpool's first team, would have played more had it not been for injuries. And he's going to a major international tournament. I mean, an incredible talent. And it goes back, Kev, to a discussion we've had on Acsom numerous times, where we say we are able and we're capable of producing talent, but we've got an issue with keeping them. And we've got an issue when they hit a certain point in their career and allowing them to progress into the first team. Ben Doak is a shining example of that, and it shines a light on some of the issues we've got. But it's in the same week, of course, that young Kelly has, you know, gathered interest or attracted interest from Bayer Leverkusen. It was bound to happen. And, you know, we've already seen all season the contract talks with Rocco Vata. You know, we've seen so many youngsters over the last few years, Kev, leaving Celtic without really making their mark in the first team. And I keep asking the questions, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better to try and nurture them in a Celtic jersey?
It's quite difficult, because you see they get Ben Doak's an example, Now, if Ben Doak couldn't have got injured, he's probably sitting with a League Cup winners' medal with Liverpool now. Like, he is probably sitting with that young side that came in. And what we've got to say is, would he have made the progression at Celtic that he made going to Liverpool under 23s at 16, playing at a higher level of football? And that's where the problem comes in. Celtic are probably not doing too much wrong in terms of developing these boys up to their 16. The problem then comes when they get between 16 and 19 and there's no pathway into the first team, mainly because of the pressure that comes with playing with Celtic. And also, we demand that we win every week. And also, as well, the fact that the Scottish League's pretty rubbish. And these guys are getting offered to go to under 23 academies, which are a far higher level in the Scottish game. Or they're getting at 16, you're getting told you're going to go to the Lowland League and play against civil service strollers or whoever they play against in the Lowland League and stuff like that.
Club Humberston, I think they're in that league, aren't they?
We have no pathway, and the reason that we have no pathway, I don't even think a reserve league would actually sort it. The reason that we've got no pathway is because we're playing Scottish football and players didn't develop the exact same. Now, we could have all the best coaches and that in the world, but if you look at that St Mirren team that we played on Saturday, I think there was about 8 of them that were over 6'7", and it's just a physical league, and there's no pressure on development. This is one of the things that Neil Lennon maybe got wrong when Rangers got liquidated, and he didn't bring in many of the youth players where we were having a free hit, basically a league title, which we were with. And when guys like Dylan McGeoch, for example, left, we still couldn't tell you if Dylan McGeoch was a decent player because he didn't have enough game time. The Celtic's problem now is we develop great players until they're 16. These players are getting picked up with academies at the better league that have got more money. And it doesn't matter if you give guys like Ben Doak and Danny and the guy Kelly games. They're going to go to a higher level and they're getting offered to go to that higher level far quicker now than what they were even 5-6 years ago. And I don't think there's very, very much Celtic can do about that. Are these guys good enough to come into the first team at 16, 17? Probably no. But they are good enough to go and play in Germany. They are good enough to go and play in Italy. They are good enough to go to under 23 academies doing in the EPL and actually progress as football players far more than what they'll ever do in Scotland. Until we leave Scotland, it's always going to be a problem. Until we get out of Scotland, it's always going to be a problem. Unless we just do what Brentford done. We just become the travelling Mulberries and just play Leverkusens, Dortmunds.
Yeah.
Didn't play in a league, just play in like development games.
Play higher standard teams.
The higher standard teams. That's maybe something that they've got to look at instead of the Lowland League.
Yeah, I mean, Kev, you've come full circle on the Scotland thing because I think when we started in 2017, you were all for the traditional element of Celtic playing in the country, but during the period that we've been broadcasting, you've come around to the thinking and the point of view that if an opportunity arises and Celtic should actually leave the country, and that's something that you've been dead against, isn't it? But you've completely come full circle on that, and I think a big part of that is the academy. But it's it's not as simple. I think it's not as simple as just saying we can't compete financially. So I think you brought up a lot of good points, Kev, in relation to what can we offer them once they come out of the underage kind of academies.
Just to add to what Kev's saying, I agree. I don't think Celtic are blameless in it, but I also don't think it's a big failing on Celtic's part. If the players are good enough at a certain age, we'll play them. If the players are good enough to be regulars, you look at Frimpong. Now, I think when Frimpong initially came to Celtic, I know he wasn't one of our own, but he was probably bought in to be developed as a 17, 18-year-old. Yeah. But he showed straight away he's good enough, and we played him. We played him regularly, So same with Tierney, same with other players. If they're good enough, they will play. I think the issue, even with Doak, I'm pretty sure came on as a 16-year-old against Rangers. Mm-hmm. And then the following week against Dundee United when we needed a goal, He was one of the first subs to come on. So I think we were prepared to give these guys a chance. But as Kev's saying, unless they're playing absolutely, not week in, week out, but pretty regularly, if they've got the same opportunity to go to an academy down south, such as Liverpool or Bayern Munich, they're going to pick that over being in the reserves at Celtic. And you can't blame them for that. But I think if we were to offer these kind of guys regular football week in, week out, they would stay. But the issue is, they're probably not good enough to get that first team football at the moment. And then they're just, nowadays they've got advisors who are saying, oh, well, we can get you a move here, there, the next thing. And it's difficult because we are in a league where we have to win every week. It's different. You look at the likes of Ajax now, there's a reason Ajax go through cyclical periods where they'll be terrible. You look at this season, for example, they were pretty poor. So what they almost do is sacrifice that for a season or two where they are having to play a lot of youngsters and they're trying to build up again. And then maybe in about a year or two's time, they'll see the fruits of that. And then you see when they got to the Champions League semi-final or the Europa League final. But I think we as Celtic fans naturally wouldn't accept us maybe just having a year or two of just flooding a lot of youngsters into the team and then sacrificing that consistency that obviously will naturally not be as consistent when you play a lot of youngsters. So it's a hard one. It's a hard balance to find. But I do think if we've got players that are good enough, we will play them. It's just sometimes trying to find that balance. Like Doc, we would have happily kept him and made him a feature of that kind of first team squad. But the lure of Liverpool and the fact that he was actually getting game time with Liverpool, whether it's in the Europa League or League Cup, is going to be more of a lure than playing maybe every 3-4 weeks for Celtic. So it's a tough one. But we've offered Daniel Kelly a contract. We've offered Rocco Vata. These guys have to earn it as well. These guys have to show that they're capable. I don't think it's a case of just giving them the world straight away. So it's a hard balancing act to find, I think.
No, you're right. It definitely is.
You make the point with Vata there, eh? I mean, none of your wingers were up to much. Dane Winger was up to much for months over that season there, and he still wasn't considered there. And you're going, why is that? Why? That's a question that you've got there. I mean, Kelly got on in a few games as well, but once the bodies got back in front of him, he's been on the bench quite a few times and he is involved in the bench. But once the more experienced boys got in front of him, he wasn't getting on as a sub as often as what he done once the bodies come back. Eh? And you've got to ask yourself about Vata. I mean, their wingers were terrible and Rodgers still won the game of stuff.
See the thing, Kev, this season, going back to what Acsom says about winning every game, this season has been difficult. But the one example I would use to strengthen what you're saying there is when we were 6-0 up, I think it was at halftime against Dundee. Was it 6-0 at halftime? And Rocco Vata's sitting on the bench. He never got a game. And you think, give him a half. Give him a half at that point. Get him some game time. Get him some first team football in his legs. That was the one time I thought I thought it was unfair.
We brought on Kelly at half-time for McGregor that day.
Yeah.
And I agree with Kev then. It makes you think, okay, this isn't just a case of not giving that an opportunity. There's something deeper there that Rodgers didn't feel that he wanted to give that an opportunity. So there's something behind the scene. Like, we don't know the full ins and outs. All you hear is snippets, and I'm sure we've all heard different takes and different things on it. But there's a reason that Rodgers has been reluctant to use him, especially when, as Kev said there, we had wingers who were given chance after chance and were delivering poor performance week in, week out, yet still we didn't do it. So it suggests there was something there behind the scenes that Rodgers wasn't happy with. And that, to me, I'll trust the manager on that. I'll trust that he's seen them week in, week out. He's watching them in training, and he's decided not to do that. And ultimately, he's been proven correct. We've won the league this season by hook or by crook. So I'll trust his judgment on what decisions he's made throughout the course of the season.
Yeah. I'm going to come to Josh in a wee second. John Keenan says, no point having a youth academy if nobody's going to get a chance. I like Kevin's idea of organising games. It may not necessarily be in a league format, but certainly will give the younger guys more of a challenge, midweek games every other week against clubs who maybe play under 23 football down south. And a pal of mine goes down and watches quite a lot of those games in his job, and he says the standard is night and day, Kev, and the physicality, like you say, is night and day as well. You and Boy Martin, this kind of ties in with another point Kev was making. I agree with Kevin. Need to get Kev. There's too many people agreeing with you, mate, on this show. There's something wrong. This is unusual. This is very unusual. If people agree with Kevin Graham,
I need
right?
to change that.
Ever think need to get out of Scottish football and hopefully into a new revamped European league? I'll come back to that. Josh, what can we do better, do you think, to ensure that when you see that name of a young talent in the Scotland squad, he's still with Celtic? Is there anything we can do? Are we up against it? What do you reckon?
Well, as both the guys have said, the big issue is game time. These players need to play. And like we've talked about, it's if you look at all these big development teams, the teams that develop all these players and they sell them on for all the money, these teams aren't winning the league every year like Celtic are expected to. So we need to be prepared to take a risk if we're going to play young players. Teams like Borussia Dortmund, and Ajax, they don't win every single year, every trophy. That just doesn't happen. So it's a risk with the youth, and it's a risk that the club's not willing to take, and it's a risk that even the fans aren't willing to take, I don't think. So I think I like the idea of having better opponents for the young players to play against. And looking at like Rocco Vata with game time, I do think a big part of that maybe would have been the fact that his contract was up and it didn't seem like he was in a hurry to sign it. You're thinking you've got Yang's a young player. Maybe Rodgers would rather give him game time if he's still going to be here next year than Vata. If he might not, he might be gone. I think it's maybe that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward in a strange way to seeing how a lot of these guys develop, Kev, because, you keep an eye, I think, on, is it Barry Hepburn? You keep an eye on his progress. And obviously he got the move to Bayern Munich, as did Liam Morrison. But Barry Hepburn was back at Queen's Park this season, and he's in a championship sitting on a bench. So, it's not as if all these young guys fly the nest to bigger and better things and they're great successes. We've got to wait and see. I mean, even Angelini, the goalkeeper who went initially to Watford, he's made a second move to Brentford. He's only 20-year-old, never played a senior game. I'd love to see how these guys develop and whether or not, once in a while we lose an absolute gem, but most of them probably wouldn't have made it anyway. I don't know. I think we'll find that out in the fullness of time. There's people coming in relation to, there you go, Danny Boy. So you're saying just get rid of our academy, Kev, it's doing us no good. Well, not necessarily, but there are clubs in England who have done it, Kev, isn't there? They're now, they don't have their own academy. They're buying up talents when they get to a certain age.
What I would say, the academy in its current format is no doing us any good. And so I wouldn't get rid of it, but there has to be a serious rejig of what we actually do with players.
Good time to do it, Kev, with the Barrowfields development.
There is a good time to do it, and I don't know. I mean, again, we're the richest club in Scotland, and we should have the best of the best in the coaches there. We should have the best academy in Scotland, and do we? Who knows? It's like we should have the best sports scientists. We've spoken about this before, and this is where the money should actually be spent, is on the infrastructure and stuff like that. And so maybe the move to Barrowfield will maybe help, but I don't know. Sometimes I just think Celtic do a bit of cigarette packet calculations when it comes to stuff like the academy and that, and say maybe every 10 years you will get a McGeady, a Tierney coming through in that, and that'll pay for it, But I don't know. Lads, I'm going to need to head, unfortunately. But
you've left without annoying or upsetting anybody, Kev. So you're going to have to come back on at some point this week, mate, to keep that record up.
I will do. What I will say to everybody, the Celtic Cross Collectors Henrik Larsson EP is out now. It's available for streaming it to download on Spotify and wherever you get your music. Check the Acsom socials for the links there. We're raising money for Jamie Tierney. There's also a t-shirt out now as well, and there will be a listening party next week on Acsom at some point once we can arrange it. So please stream, please share with everybody. It's all for a good cause, and I think it's absolutely fantastic, but then I'm biased.
Yeah, I agree with you though, Kev. And we are going to have a listener party. Great to see you, mate. Enjoy the rest of your day.
It's like the Forest testimonial. He's getting subbed off after 10 minutes.
Everybody cheers, and then a few people boo. Right? No, Kevin Graham loves the crack. He absolutely loves the crack. And what he was saying there is in relation to the fact that he has gone from podcasting to being a poet, to being a published poet, to appearing live on various stages all over the country. And now he's actually cut an EP with a couple of good pals, one of which is Andy Rafferty, bit of a musical genius. Another drummer, the drummer actually is my brother, believe it or not. So there you go. And it's well worth listening to. We did play it during the charity weekender, and we're going to be doing a listening party influenced and inspired by the Charlatans frontman Tim Burgess. So we will announce that. We will be putting out the links. I will share a link on the bottom of this video as well. So thanks everybody for getting involved. Let's hear your thoughts on the big talking points. We're going into the Scottish Cup final this weekend. Brendan Rodgers has a flawless record. Will it continue? We are talking about the squad announcement from Stevie Clarke for the Euros. It's the second time we've appeared in the Euros in a row. There's a generation of fans getting used to this, which is tremendous. And of course, everything else that comes up in relation to what we're doing with the Youth Academy. I'm going to bring this one up from Tim Barnsley. Thank you for supporting the channel, Tim. And I hope you're enjoying the show. Great avatar there of a famous victory this season against Rangers. Do you think we should sign Ida and Miovski? Ida and Miovski. Right, I'm going to come to you first, Asim. What's your take on that? We're obviously in the market for a striker.
Yeah, well, if you asked me around January time, I was big on Miovski in terms of what I thought he could bring to the table, and he's kind of tailed off a wee bit in the last half of the season, I feel, but still a striker that I rate in terms of his finishing ability and his potential still to develop. He's still in his kind of early to mid 20s. I think he's got an eye for goal. He can link up, but if you ask me out of the two, if we were to pick one, I would pick Ida all day long. I've really been impressed with Ida. I think his performance against Kilmarnock, I know like impressed with him quite a few times. I've seen him, but that performance particularly was honestly flawless. Right from the very first minute, his ability to hold the ball in, link up, and then get back in the box. It was a proper centre forwards performance. He was doing it all game. He offers something different to what obviously Kyogo does, and I think that's important as well, that we can mix it up. I remember before the game when the call was made for Ida to start, a lot of people were questioning it. But again, trust the manager, and he absolutely nailed it. He knew what Kilmarnock's strengths were and weaknesses, and we absolutely terrorised them from the off, and Ida was a big part in that. So I don't know what the figures are. Obviously, that's going to be a big factor as to whether we go for it. But I think if we're talking in the 5-6 million region, I would really be inclined to go for Ida. I think he can still get better. The manager clearly rates him, enjoys working with him. He enjoys being here. He seems popular within the playing staff. We already know it, and you've seen that before. The ones where we've bought players, having tried them out for a while, have been successful. Your Jota, Carter Vickers, Edward. I think it's a no-brainer, really. If it's a reasonable price, and I think 5 to 6 for me is a reasonable price for him, I would buy him. Would I go for Miovski on top of that? It's difficult. We only play one striker. Now, obviously, looks like he's not in the manager's plans. He's been totally out of the picture. Whether we loan him out, then definitely we need a third striker in, because if we're playing 8 games in the Champions League, League Cup, Scottish Cup League, we're going to need more than 2 strikers. So, and I think that would be a good 3 in terms of you could trust all 3 of them domestically and in Europe to have a contribution. So, ideally, yes. Whether I think we'll go down that route of buying 2 strikers upwards of 5 and 6 million, I doubt. But if we could get both, I think that's a really strong front line. But the priority for me would be getting Ida tied up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I've viewed this is similar to yourself, Asim. I was looking at a player in Miovski. I didn't scoff at him. I just looked at a player who was with a team who, they're a bit of a basket case. You just look at Aberdeen this season. You look at the whole Neil Warnock thing, and big high-profile Aberdeen fans were shaking their head in disbelief, as if Aberdeen was some kind of toy, a wee plaything that you can, I fancy going up and managing in Scotland. Yet you've had this striker who has had a tremendous season. He's done it, obviously, when Aberdeen have played in Europe as well. He's prolific. And, I don't know what the situation was around, I think it was the summer initially, bringing him to the club, because was it our reluctance to pay big money to another Scottish team? I'm not so sure, because I think he had proved himself at that level, and then he caused us problems, didn't he, up at Pittodrie in the semi-final. And Ida's come in with not much of a fanfare, but he has done as much as he possibly can. And there's still another game for him to do some damage for Celtic. So I think, certainly for Ida, and I've said this all week, if the fee is £5 or £6 million, pay it, bring him in. You know, I think that's a no-brainer. I think there's more of a dilemma on the Paulo Bernardo question. And a lot of that will come down to what Brendan Rodgers, like you were saying earlier on, Asim, what he's seeing day to day, his application, the fact that, you know, we're just maybe getting a snippet on game day, but he's maybe seeing a guy with bags of potential. And if he was to sign him permanently, I would trust his judgment. I really would. I would trust Brendan Rodgers' judgment. I also think Miovski would improve under Rodgers, you know, with the stability of Celtic as a football club, playing with better players, the success in and around them. I'm going to throw this one over to yourself, Josh. What's your take on the Miovski rumour that won't go away, and whether or not we sign Ida permanently? What's your take on that, Josh?
If I had to choose out of the two, I'd probably choose Ida, just because we know he's proven that he works at Celtic. From what I've seen from him, I think he gives us a really good option in comparison to Kyogo, the way he holds the ball, the way he plays his back to goal, and just the way he can link up with the wingers and bring them into the game. He's a lot better in there than Kyogo, obviously, because he's got the height. I think Miovski would be a really good player at Celtic, but I just think if the prices are similar, like it's being said, then I'd go for the one that we know would work. Getting both of them, I mean, it would be nice to have the three strikers of that quality, but I don't know if the strikers themselves would agree, because you know that Miovski would get limited minutes, I imagine, unless he can really prove himself, because look at he's barely got any time, and I don't know if we have space in our squad for three strikers around the same level if they're all fighting for one spot.
What's your take on that, Asim?
Well, the thing is, if you remember Rodgers' last season, he started the season with Edouard and Dembele, and it looked like that's the way we were going to go down that route until I think Dembele might have got injured. No, Dembele left, didn't he? Dembele left pretty early on. So I don't think he'd be... See, if we were to get three strikers like that, of that quality, I think it gives us a great option to sometimes go with the two, and then you still got a third one that can come on. And if we were looking at playing, obviously, and making a fist in all four competitions next season, we talk often about Celtic moving to that next level. Now, you look at these teams in Europe that we play and that we always look on and envy almost. They've got three good players for every position. They've got players that you can trust to come in and do a job. Now, I don't see us doing it, but I think it would be a real statement of intent if we were to go down that route of being like, yeah, okay, it's three. We've got three strikers who might even then push each other on to do even better. Now, I know what you're saying, two strikers not playing regularly, it's not going to go down well, and you want Rodgers like a tight-knit squad and, you know, making sure everyone's contributing. But again, it gives us that option sometimes. Do you want to play two up front, or, you know, naturally injuries will occur. Having three strikers that you can rely on, because there have been times this season where we've clearly not been able to rely on O. Now, I've always backed up O and thinking, you know, he's got potential, but when you see the difference with Ida, we've been able to rely on, and has single-handedly at times won us games or made a massive contribution. In the year and a half that O's been here, I can't really say that. O's not really had that defining spell or game where you're like, you know what, he's the man for us. Having three strikers that can do that, I think, could really take us to that next level, where if you get one injury, you're not worried, you're not panicking. Or, like I say, you want to go two up front, you've got two real different, you've got a target man in Ida, and then you've got someone like Miovski or Kyogo that can link up. I think it'd be brilliant. Whether we do that or not, I don't know. I guess depends on the budget we've got, how much Rodgers has got to spend, and then he'll try and weigh that up as to his priority positions. But, you know, it's exciting if we could do something like that.
Here's one for you then. We're all massive users of social media. It's part and parcel of life these days, I guess. Maybe for 1 month a year, we'll get into the habit of going away on an island somewhere without any devices. That would be nice. But our screen time is high. We're looking at the socials. And after the Player of the Year appearance from Odsonne Edouard, there are rumours, unsubstantiated, around interest from Celtic. And I seen quite an interesting one actually from a Palace fan yesterday, who wouldn't give his source away but said it was a decent source and he's not known for talking nonsense. The big thing for me would be how you budget a move like that, because the minute someone goes to, there's only certain players we can buy from that league. You know, we can buy a Jeremy Frimpong, an under-23 player with bags of potential, and buying them at the right time and bringing them in. And we did that before with certain types of players. You know, we did bring some of them in on loan, as it happens, but we did it with Dedrick Boyata. Remember, he was at Man City, brought him in, and then obviously before you know it, he's playing with the number 1 ranked international side with Belgium. And I think we can do it with the guys like Joe Hart at the kind of tail end of their career. But there's that bit in the middle where the wages are just so astronomical that Celtic really cannot compete. And I can't fathom it out in terms of the budget, how we could ever make a deal for Edouard work. But there's a few people talking about it in the comments, so we're going to bring it up. And obviously the other player that's been mentioned, ex-Celt, is Fraser Forster. So we'll bring up the comments on that one as well. But as so often happens, and you've got to get used to this, Josh, if you're on the show, people will be looking at every aspect of your performance, including your backdrop. And Pete McGee has spotted 2 Bob Dylans and a Janis Joplin in there as well. People will they'll not miss a thing. They won't miss a thing, mate. Let me tell you.
No.
The Urban Culture says, top right picture could be big Jim Holton. Did you know, the Urban Culture, that Jim Holton, like Graham Souness, was one of those guys that went up to Celtic Park on a Tuesday and a Thursday to train with the group of guys that became known as the Quality Street Gang. Unbelievable. Went on to have a brilliant career with Manchester United, didn't he, and Scotland. The Urban Culture also says, don't want Eddie or Foster. Smell the glove. Fraser Forster's 36. Let's move on. Stuart Ramsey, Foster and French Eddie are a no for me. Right. Thank you, everybody, for that. I'm just going to throw a spanner in the works here. Brendan Rodgers and Odsonne Edouard is a match made in heaven. I just don't think we can do it financially. If you asked me, would I take Miovski and Ida or Edouard? There you go. There's the debate. Miovski and Ida or Edouard. I would take Edouard, but I don't think we could do the deal. Josh, am I right? Is it just too expensive for us?
Yeah, I don't. Financially, I just don't see how it works, to be honest. Anytime a player goes to England, usually how much they cost skyrockets. I don't think he's done amazingly, to be honest, down there. I think there was the start of Patrick Vieira. I think a bit during Patrick Vieira had a good spell where he was playing, but it's just not worked out for him. If we could get it in on a decent price, decent wages, I would take it in a heartbeat, obviously, but I just don't know how that works. But as far as Foster goes, I wouldn't be opposed to him coming in. It's like people mention the age, but like how Joe Hart wasn't the youngest and we got him in and he done well. But if we were to get Foster in, I'd still like for us to spend some money on another keeper on the younger side.
Yeah. And we'll have a wee chat about some of the names.
Position.
Yeah. You know, James McKenzie wrote a blog on Joe Hart. It went on the socials and instantly everybody was getting angry about the fact that we would even mention Fraser Forster. And, you know, James actually said he wouldn't sign him. That was James's take on it. There's been a few other goalkeepers mentioned. The thing with Edouard, Acsom, I think once you get to that level, even though it's, you know, Palace, maybe kind of mid-table club in the Premiership, you're still talking 80 grand a week. It's an incredible wage hike the minute you get to that level. I don't think we can do it unless, as Lawrence said last week, I think, if you were to do something around the signing on fee being substantial, which makes up some of the wages that follow. I mean, I don't think that's a kind of thing that would be in the kind of thought process of Rodgers. But some players do cross over, interestingly enough. And Edouard, of course, did cross over with Kyogo. There's a great picture of Kyogo coming on in a European game for Edouard. You know, you tend to forget that in the very early days of Ange. Is it a go, Acsom, or is it pie in the sky stuff?
I didn't think anything of it, and then obviously you mentioned the Player of the Year night, and a lot of people were talking about how that was quite an odd one for him to be coming over while still obviously employed with Palace and still the season ongoing at that point. Edouard's a strange one. I think obviously his last season taints a wee bit of what people's opinions on him. If you remember the season prior, he was absolutely phenomenal. You know, there was talk of him being, you know, our best since Larsson at that point, you know, and people were weighing up who's better, Dembele or Edouard. So I think you can't forget how good he was for us during his peak spell. Obviously, that last season, he and along with a lot of the players, didn't do themselves any favours, and it just had a bit of a sad ending. But what age is he now? He must be mid-20s.
I'm going to
And
say
what-
I
26,
think
but I'm
he's
going to
about
check that
26.
just while you're
Yeah, so
speaking.
he's still at a very good age where you think he can still get better. He's had a very mixed time at Palace, hasn't he? There's been spells where he's been really good. I know he started off really well, and then they rotate their strikers quite a lot. So it's been a bit of an average spell, I would say, in the end for him there. But you'd 100% take him back. I think sometimes people question his maybe his attitude. I think that's just his style of play. He's always going to have that kind of demeanour where it looks like he's maybe not fully given his all, but I think that's just his style. If you ask me, is it feasible? I don't think so. I don't know. We sold him for 15 million? Was that around that figure? They'll be looking for that back probably, or there or thereabouts. We're not going to spend that, I don't think, on Edward. And if we were, I think we could look elsewhere even. But if it was something that we could do, maybe, I don't know, a loan deal, you'd take it. But I still think it's more like, again, same with Foster. I think we don't need to always look back at previous ones. I think we can be looking forward now. I don't think, it's not. It's one that would excite fans naturally, but I think there are probably better options for the money that we'd have to spend there elsewhere. Same with Foster. I really like the guy. Every time you hear him talk about Celtic, he waxes lyrical about his time in the club. But at 36, again, the style of football that we now want to play, I think we should be looking at other options. I know we've been linked with the Wolfsburg keeper in the last couple of days, and to me that looks like more like the kind of profile of the kind of guy I would be looking to sign for our number one spot.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward, Asim, to you joining us on the bulletin the day that we announce a triple signing of Tierney, Foster and Edouard. That'll be interesting. It'll be good to hear Edouard's song, but I think we would empty the bank in trying to get him here. Odds on Edouard, as you suggested, he's 26 years of age. His Celtic record was 87 goals and 38 assists, by the way. That was surprising when I saw that, in 179 games. Since going to Palace, 101 games, 21 goals and 5 assists. I don't know how many of those games were full 90 minutes, though, because he seems to have been used sparingly at times. He still has a year left on his contract at Palace, and wherever he goes, I wish him all the best. But you're right, Asim. Again, he had that kind of style about him. It was interesting when he was on the stage with Samaras, who's the most laid back of the two, because both of them had that. And we've got an interesting couple of comments coming in relation to the future of Celtic and Scottish football. Here we go. We'll bring it up. Parkhead Boy, what's he on about? Never leaving Scotland. Now, here's the thing, right? Maybe you're right. But I do know that in terms of in the past, the club has absolutely looked at the possibility of leaving Scottish football. And one of the most interesting attempts was, you'll remember when Fergus McCann took over the club, and his financial advisor at that time was David Lowe. David Lowe has appeared a number of times on a Celtic State of Mind. It's always great to hear from him. He thinks and talks about football in a different way, obviously with the financial aspect. And David Lowe was at the head, or I don't know even if I would call it a consortium, but he was a head of a group who back in 1998 basically made an attempt to take a Scottish football club to Ireland to test the water, to see if it was possible to take a Scottish club and get them to play in a different league. And the club that they purchased was Clydebank. I got this from David during an interview, and it blew my mind because I couldn't remember it happening at the time, or perhaps I didn't know why it was happening. So anyway, they bought Clydebank, and what they did is they changed the address of Clydebank to an address in Dublin. And what they wanted to do is start playing their football over in Ireland. And it was basically, it was a Trojan horse. It was a test to see if you could take a club from one country and transfer them over to another country. And it was a test because there was a view that in the future at some point Celtic would do the same. And I know that in and around the time of Alan McDonald at Celtic, there was the big talk of the, I think they actually called it the G8, the league, whereby there was 8 different regions, and it was teams from places like Belgium and the Netherlands and Scotland who would then play in a league where there was promotion and relegation. So if Celtic got relegated, another Scottish club could jump in their place and all this kind of stuff. That was very interesting. Whether or not it happens in the future, I'm not so sure. But what put a stop to David Lowe's plans was the fact that the 1998 World Cup, interestingly enough, the last time Scotland were in the finals of the World Cup, a lot of the heads of different associations got together and said, we cannot allow this to happen. Because I think a lot of the associations were worried that we're going to lose the biggest teams. And obviously the financial hit that it would take was a concern for them. So they wrote in new legislation to prevent it from happening. And so any clubs who were already playing in a different country, such as Swansea playing in England, etc., they would be allowed to continue, but new clubs playing in a different country, it was absolutely vetoed. So in answer to your question, you're probably right. It might not happen. Why can't we ask to get a team in the Irish League? That's interesting, Danny. Danny boy, I guess you're talking maybe a nursery club in the Irish League. I think it makes sense. Get young guys, maybe 4 or 5 at a time, loaned out to another club. Maybe with it happened before. Ujpest Dosha. We had a partnership with them over in Hungary, and we even put Willie McStay in place as a manager, and it didn't work. So it would be interesting to see as well. Let's have a wee chat about this weekend's game. I'm going to start off with Ewan Martin. Ewan was instrumental in taking Acsom over to Dunoon last Friday, and I can't talk highly enough of the place. Absolutely beautiful scenery. It's all about bottle, says Ewan. We're like champagne, always bubbling to the top, while they are like Bucky, a mad charge, but always falling flat in their faces. Nice analogy. Josh, how are you feeling about the weekend? How do we play it? Is it the same lineup that started against Rangers at Parkhead, or do we play Ida up top?
I'm feeling very confident about the game, to be honest. I'd go for the same lineup. I think they done well in the last game. I think Kyogo's always looks like he's ready in cup games as well. And I can picture him setting him up to the plate, scoring a goal or two in the Rangers. But I'm just confident. I think we are the better team. I think we've shown we're the better team, and we've got the momentum going into it. So I think it will be a good day out, and I think we'll win.
Well, the big thing for me is my missus is one of these Celtic fans I seen who didn't support Celtic until they met me. You know, that situation where when you're with somebody who talk about Celtic for 24/7, it's probably easier just to get involved. Right, that's my missus. So she was saying to me, are we going to win this weekend? And I said, well, it works on 3 elements. If Celtic turn up, we win the game, right? The only 3 elements that would prevent that from happening is if we've got 3 or 4 guys off form on the day, Rangers play to the absolute peak of their capabilities, and there's a couple of dodgy refereeing decisions, as we've seen at certain points this season. Is that me being arrogant? I hope not, but I share Josh's confidence going into this game, Asim. How are you feeling?
Yeah, 100%. You look at the 4 games, we've been the better team in all 4 of them. And at no point in any of those games have we really been in danger of losing. You know, it's always been us ahead and them chasing and trying to get back in the game. And in each of those games, we've had opportunities to put it beyond doubt in terms of actually running away with it. You look at 2-0 at Ibrox at halftime, could have really gone on and put the game to bed before halftime. Same with the Celtic Park game there with the penalty miss. We've had the opportunities to really, really bury them within game, and we've just not been clinical enough. So all that, plus the fact that we've, since the split, been on our best form all season, scoring 5 goals at Rugby Park, beating Hearts comfortably 3-0. We're scoring goals. Obviously, we let in a couple against St Mirren, but with a makeshift back line. It all paints to, and then you look at their form, shipping goals left, right and centre, 2 to Dundee, albeit they won comfortably in the end, but 3 to Hearts, 2 to us. So they're not in good form. We are in good form. It all points towards us being, but then on the flip side, it's a one-off cup final, the first Scottish Cup final in 20 years against them. We've all seen it before. Refereeing decisions can turn games. We can have a bad day. They can have a good day. So I'm not going to be complacent. As Kev said earlier on, we're rightfully going into it full of confidence. The players will rightfully be going into it feeling good about themselves, feeling confident. Likewise, the manager. So it's all set up for us, but we still have to go out there and do it. And as you said, there are variables that can change the course of a game, especially in a cup final. So I'm by no means thinking it's going to be a canter or ruling it out as if it's a done deal. Like this time last season, we're going into that Inverness game, and we all know we're going to win. No disrespect, but you almost know we're going to win. Yeah. It's obviously not that way this time. We have to go and earn it. They're going to be up for it as well. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere. But we have to use all the feel-good factor. We have to use all that form and know-how that we've showed in the last few weeks to go and do it. And I'm confident we will. But again, we spoke about it earlier on. We've achieved what we set out to do this season, which was make sure we win that league again. Now, whatever happens in this cup final, obviously it would be absolutely brilliant to win it and top it off. But as gutted as we might be if it doesn't go our way, I think ultimately we've had a successful season in terms of achieving the main objective, which was to get that title. And it would be fitting for us to go and do the double now, and I think we will. I'm confident in the sense that I think everything's set up for us to go and do it. We just need to go and now turn up, and I think with our first team in there, with the player, I think we'll, like Josh says, I think we'll start with the same lineup, and having the likes of Ida to come on. I think we'll have more than enough to hopefully see the job out in 90 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be covering the game, as we always do. Join us an hour before kickoff on a Celtic State of Mind various social media channels. We stream live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X and Instagram. Thanks everybody for jumping onto the Instagram stream. We've got Nancy Moffat, Jamie Cameron, David Stewart, Melanie Brady and more, adding to our trend on Instagram, which is fairly new, I guess, but we're going to keep building that. Franny Weldon, Oi Oi Music. If we can't get both, Miovski is a no-brainer. He will score a barrel load of goals for us. I think he would. I totally agree with that. And we've got Patrick McLaughlin, McGeary and Tierney have paid for Lennoxtown. Yeah, I think when you look at both of those guys, they were generational talents in many ways. McGeady was sensational. And they sold for big money. I think between the two of them, probably £35 million plus. What I think we need to do is to ensure that this point from Michael, it's not just about game time money talks also. We need to be able to offer them a decent deal as well as a gateway, because if they're going to get offered 10 grand down south, which is a drop in the ocean for one of these Premiership clubs, it's going to be very difficult for a young guy to turn that down as well. Anthony Beattie, love to see us keeping academy players, but money talks as well. It's part of our tradition as a football club. I think you can modernise, but also have some traditions that benefit the club. And I think an academy should benefit us. We maybe should just approach it slightly different. What do you think about producing footballers? Let us know in the comments section. What do you make of Stevie Clark's Euro squad with the 4 Celts in it? And how are you feeling going into the game this weekend? Also, in terms of strikers, who would you have? Would you break the bank for Edouard? Would you bring in Miovski? Would you bring in Ida? Let us know in the comments section. James Kennedy, great to see you in the comments, James. Ralston plays for the jersey when he's playing. He absolutely does. And we've got Ralston is one of the best crossers of the ball at Celtic. Michael Barry, 100%. Now, we are going to be live in a brilliant venue in Glasgow called Banners Art and Design. I'm going to be going to visit that tomorrow afternoon, again, in advance of us being there with 3 guys who played in a tremendous side under Mark O'Neill. It's Alan Thompson, Stan Petrov and Jackie McNamara. And we keep talking about this, but that team under Mark O'Neill started the ball rolling on this domestic domination, which has continued right up until the present day. We have a generation of Celtic fans who have known nothing but success. A couple of cups here and there, I've seen, but you know what? That's what happens in any sport. We have had a clean sweep for 4 years running. We've had a 9 in a row. We've had an invincible treble. It's a great time to be a Celtic supporter. If you want to come along and enjoy an Acsom night, then we will be at Barra's Art and Design with Tomo Petrov and Jackie Mack on the 27th of June. Now, these gigs normally sell out, so get your tickets quickly. The ticket link is below. Now, we've seen the veteran going off to a standing ovation, Asim, and we've seen a debut boy in Josh. I think he done pretty good for a debut. What do you think?
Solid debut. Try to think who it reminds me of. It'll come back to me. But no, brilliant, Josh. Great to have you on. Just to reiterate, the venue's brilliant. The Barra's Art and Design. We've been to a couple of the shows there, so it's incredible. And those three guys, it takes me back to when I first really got into Celtic. It was that era under Martin O'Neill. Players like Tomo and McNamara, Petrov, icons. So should be a great night. So I'm looking forward to that, hopefully.
Yeah, and as we have done these now for, I think, a year and a half, we're trying to improve them all the time. So big screen images and footage just to get the juices flowing. We've also got Paul Sheridan of the Wakes to give us some music live before the gig and at halftime as well. Get your tickets underneath this video. I'm looking really very much forward to bringing the guys onto the stage. All that's left for me to say is thanks, everybody, for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to the Acsom team. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30. Thank you to Kevin Graham, Asim Rabani, and also to debutant Josh Murphy for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, lads.